Thank you, actually, James and Malcolm, very much for sort of inviting me here to speak to you. Someone said, do you mind making speeches? And the chap said, no, I don't mind making speeches at all, but I hate having to listen to them. So I feel slightly sorry for you having to listen to me. But anyway, my thoughts around this have rambled quite a lot, and I was particularly looking at it from the point of view of Britain as well, within Europe, because we're also a nation within Europe, and therefore sometimes we're a bit UK-centric, but sometimes we're European and trying to look at the whole thing from a bigger perspective of Europe, and sometimes more international than that, because we were always world traders in Britain, and so we've got to think of the whole world as well. It's not just us. The other thing that I suddenly thought was worth thinking about is, what do we mean by Europe? If we look at the companies, actually, we sort of say it's an American company, or it's a European company, or it's a British company, or whatever. But it may have started there. But at the end of the day, who owns it? Our pension funds own companies all over the world, or large slices of them. I can remember when one of the Japanese car manufacturers bought up one of the British failing car manufacturers, and all the workers said, "This is terrible." And a stockbroker went on TV and said, "Oh, actually, our pension funds own them anyway. So does it matter?" And in this global world, it's no longer quite so clear what you mean by, say, a Europe, if you're talking about the companies, because is it, for instance, SAP? I mean, what are you? Are you American or you're global? And who owns you? Well, do they actually? You're quoted on the stock markets. So therefore we all, a lot of us own slices of you. And I probably own a slice of you through some trust or through some pension fund or something. Anyway, but that's the point. It comes down to probably, where are the people employed? Where are they spending the money? Where do they pay tax? And from the government point of view, that becomes highly relevant, because very often what we're trying to say is we're trying to keep our countries, our Europe, alive. I mean, that means having people here doing things and also generating things for the local economy. And of course, with the internet, the global internet, location actually doesn't matter so much. You could run a business from anywhere. You can run a business with people scattered across the globe. I sit on an advisory board of a company in New Zealand. Skype is tremendous. For a free conference call, I ring in late at night and get them in the morning and join in their board meetings. But all this requires infrastructure, and that's where the stumbling block comes very often. I've just been talking to my South Korean neighbours, in business terms, so neighbours. And of course, South Korea has done what we dream of, that high-speed broadband, that enablement of business which can strike out across the globe. And it isn't just broadband, of course. We've got the huge advantage. It's airports, because we do have to meet physically as well. One of the troubles with the internet is you can't really, I don't think, build up trust with someone who you haven't met. You need to sit down and share hospitality with someone, eyeball them, to discover who you really like and trust. So you've got to have some physical movement. But you don't need to be commuting every day. You can run things from all sorts of places. You can regenerate poor areas by giving them decent broadband, high-speed connection to the global internet anywhere. And then that can regenerate possibly the Scottish Highlands even. You just never know. But at the end of the day, it's very often, I think, the thing we can contribute to, because we heard about how many software developers there are in the USA, how many in India. One of the things we're good at in Europe is innovation, I think. We look at it through the ages. We've always been inventing things. We've always been producing it. The Scots, of which I am one, are particularly renowned for their inventions and their inventiveness. And to do that, we need fluid movement of people as well, for training, for getting together, for development, as well as also the internet connectivity. And one of the things that's worrying me, and I know it's not really for this, is this little nation-state sort of anti-immigration move that's going along, which is around at the moment, which is going to, I think, slow down things in an odd and inappropriate way. And it really worries me, this sort of inward turning of people. But the internet will help get us past that, the new global ways of communications. The other big problem is to give incentives for the very large corporations to deliver citizen-centric solutions. I think there's a big challenge sometimes for the large global multinational corporation to think of itself as being outside it all. It's interested in developing its markets. What are its senior people really trying to develop or do? How do we incentivize them to do what I want? When I travelled here, I went on, because it's all that the House of Lords will allow me to travel on, a standard Premier ticket. You don't get Wi-Fi on Eurostar unless you're in business class.
You don't get Wi-Fi at all in Eurostar.
Well, apparently it said it's got it in business class in this little thing, so it doesn't even work in business class. I mean, I can't believe it. I thought the Eurostar was supposed to be a great advance, and I cannot believe. Sorry?
We're waiting for our new German train.
Ah, well, there we are, you see. But this points out to the fact that access has to be ubiquitous. It has to be everywhere in order for the whole thing to work. When we talk about cloud computing, when we talk about having the Internet of Things, the way things are going to drive forwards, this interconnectivity of machines and everything like that, it doesn't work if we don't have access everywhere. And that's where things are falling down at the moment, and particularly in the UK, because I'm watching a particular large corporation using regulatory mechanisms to block SMEs, innovation and other companies coming into the market. And on the one hand, and I'm saying this because we're in the European Parliament, we are as legislators producing things for regulators to produce regulations which are supposed to be a nice level playing field in the market, but it's not working. These things are being used in the wrong way. So we've got to work out how we're going to get the incentives in the right place. And the other thing that I found is that the politicians in the central government don't understand the terminology around technology. They're terrified of technology. They glaze over when you talk about it. They have no idea what superfast means. So they can have the wool pulled over their eyes by all sorts of people. And contention, I hear what I'm being told about the wonderful thing of the world of 4G and 5G. But I'm worried about contention. We don't have that many masts in the UK. And the contention at the masts in the rural areas is going to mean that it probably isn't going to be so wonderful as people think. On the other hand, I'm quite sure that Orange, and there's a senior developer here, will prove to me absolutely wrong because you've solved the problem of how you can handle huge numbers of multiple connections. I don't know. Anyway, I was reading an article which said that Neelie Kroes would like to see Europe become the leader in semiconductor production. I thought, why? And then I realised that was a consortium of 17 or 19 companies that are in this area, based with people in Europe, that thought we could do it. I can think of one that's local to me, which is ARM, for instance, where chips are in all sorts of machines around the place and are brilliant. And a lot of this is being driven by the Internet of Things. I mean, people at the moment think of the Internet as things you get on iPhones and stuff. But once we get into the Internet of Things, the machine-to-machine communication is going to change things enormously. And we've been doing a whole lot of this in the Digital Policy Alliance, looking at it. Because it's issues like, what do you do when your machines report you're committing an offence? Your car says, by the way, in 200 miles his tyres are going to go illegal, and I can calculate that he's more than 300 miles from home. Does your car then report you to the police to stop you? I'm doing this as taking it to an absurd limit, but it's technically possible. And what about when your fridge your larder reports that you've got too much salt in it for a middle-aged man, and your salt intake is clearly far too high, and this is bad for your health, and therefore because of the cost to the health service they must prevent this. I actually had someone suggest that it could be linked to your ID card in your supermarket checkout, and we've got to watch out. And this is one of the things about what will the world look like. We can't anticipate it. On the one hand, we see how wonderful the machines can make our lives and help us. On the other hand, there are issues about privacy. There are issues about my right to eat too much chocolate and enjoy myself and die younger. I've survived a lot longer than I ever thought. There's issues about then if we start putting a lot of legislation around it, putting brakes on innovation and on things that enable people to use the machines to make their life easier, because we get over worried about that. And I think we're going to be careful about this. And I've got a great friend who talks about agency, which is having your own agent out there on the internet, which is protecting your information, only releasing it selectively under your rules to people who want it. And maybe we've got to start thinking about these things. Anyway, To finish off, Europe's been a crucible of innovation throughout all the ages. We can continue to be that, but we've got to keep the people here. Sadly, we've exported a lot of our talent in the past, some of it forcibly. Australia, places like that, America, But now we've got to attract the talent by becoming a location of choice, and that will be about infrastructure, fun, tax, all sorts of things like that. Freedom to move, freedom to enjoy yourself, and all that part of it. And so governments have got to get a grip with that, and I think that will then help Europe enter and lead in the digital age. So, thank you.